For example 3, we're asked to solve the equation. In order to solve, what it's asking is to find a value for x. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to set the equation equal to 0, and then we're going to factor. In order to set the equation equal to 0, we need everything on one side. So right now the 42 is by itself on the right hand side, so we're going to subtract 42 from each side. So now that we have the equation set equal to 0, before we can solve, we have to factor. So what we're doing is we're looking for numbers that multiply together to equal negative 42, and those same numbers add together to equal 1. So our factors of 42 are 7 and 6, and now we have to determine which one should be positive if we want to have a positive one when we find the sum. So that means I want the bigger number to be positive. So these are our factors. When we break them down into the parentheses, we still need that equal to 0. So we have x at the beginning, and then we have a positive 7 and a negative 6. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use a product property. It's called the zero product property. And this is going to help us solve the equation. So after we factor it, we use the zero product property to actually solve. The zero product property states that if a product of a real number factor is 0, then at least one of the factors must be 0. In the case of two factors, so this is the case that we're looking at, if a times b is equal to 0, then either a equals 0 or b equals 0 or both. So think of our a and our b as our set of parentheses. So what we're going to do is we're going to separate each factor, and we're going to set them each equal to 0. So if we go back to the equation, and this is our one factor, and this is our second factor, and the zero product property says that we take each one and set it equal to 0. Then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to solve our new equations. So we want to isolate, get x by itself, so x is equal to negative 7, and we add 6, so x is equal to 6. So what we've done is we've actually found our zeros of the quadratic, meaning that we found our x-intercepts of this quadratic. We're going to look at a similar example. So again, it's asking us to solve the equation 2x squared equals negative 9x plus 5. So we're first going to set the equation equal to 0, so we'll bring everything to one side. So I'm going to add 9x and I'm going to subtract 5. So I get 2x squared plus 9x minus 5. And we have it equal to 0. Then we need to factor. So any approach that you want to take to factoring is absolutely fine. I like that a times c method, where we get negative 10, and we're rewriting the equation with the same b value and our new a times c. Then we look for numbers that multiply together to get negative 10 and add together to get 9. We put x at the beginning of each parentheses, so I'll have a positive 10 and a negative 1. Now I'm not actually done yet because I do have to input that 2, so I divide the second term of the parentheses by 2. If it simplifies, then I go ahead and simplify it, and if it doesn't, then the 2 comes up and is the coefficient of x. Now I'm going to apply the zero product property. So I set each parentheses equal to 0. And then I solve. So I add 1, and then I divide by 2, so x is equal to 1/2. So what I solved for is x, and those x values represent my x-intercepts.